Good evening. This is Deborah V. Wilson. The time is 2200 hours and 47 minutes. It's Thursday, the 20th of April, 2017, and it's GMT plus 2. The time would be GMT plus 2. This would be part 2 to Who Do We Deem Worthy of Keeping Us Safe? And very briefly, I wanted to continue the podcast of yesterday because I think it's important that I want to say the potential for learning at times when there is, I think when there is an opportunity in some cases to work with the state to nuance the view of the state of how security and safety can be a very personal thing from the perspective of your intersecting identities. The safety needs of an able-bodied person might be completely different for a person who is not able-bodied. It can depend on gender. It can depend on the city you're living in, a particular location. It can depend on your outward appearance. It can depend on your religion. I think those are opportunities to nuance the state's understanding that security is not a one-size-fits-all. Also, I think the opportunity to sit and metaphorically speaking, with the state in discussing national security modeling from a civilian perspective offers the state the opportunity to understand resilience and the different ways that resilience might manifest itself in a community, in a clustering of people. I maintain that some activism is in fact a sign of resilience. I think activism can also be a sign of, and some people on the left don't like the term, but can be a sign of patriotism. You're invested in your country, in your country's safety, in your country's treatment of the marginalized. You have concerns. You want to make sure everyone shares in the wealth, metaphorically and literally speaking. So I think the opportunity to engage with the state on matters of national security can have a lot of benefits. I also wanted to do a part 2 to the video, to the podcast, my apologies, because I think, and my belief is that some activism is actually national security modeling from a civilian perspective. I think the state doesn't recognize that, but I also think private citizens don't recognize that what they're doing when you're reaching out to the state, when you're via your activism and saying you've got it wrong, you forgot about this group, you didn't consider this group's identity, you're over-policing this group, you're under-policing that group. Or simultaneously you can over-police and under-police the same group. I think all of those activities, it's fair to say and to consider them as security modeling. It's security modeling from a bottom-up perspective. So I think the ideal of what is security, how we construct the ideal of what is security, and equally how we construct the ideal of what is a threat. Who decides those things? Who defines those things? And then within the paradigm of those definitions, what is security? What is a threat? Then who do we deem worthy of keeping us safe? Who do we trust with that task? Because typically speaking, the same people that we trust with the task of keeping us safe, we've also designated as the people that can define both the threat and what it means to keep us safe. So, more than anything, this podcast is to ask more questions. What is security? What is national security modeling? How do we decide what's the best model for a nation? Who gets to make that decision? And activism, I'm challenging you to look at some activism as national security modeling from a civilian perspective. It is, in some cases, an edit of the model constructed from the state perspective, which is, of course, top down. Very short podcast with more questions than answers, but I'm hoping questions that will probe you to think, to ask yourself, what is security? Who gets to define it? What is a threat? Who gets to define it? And then within that paradigm, security, threat, defining that space, those spaces, who do we then trust or deem worthy to keep us safe? This is Debra V. Wilson, and I'm in Haifa, Israel. Thank you.